Welcome to Downloaded, the show where we gather the most opinionated voices in the tech field today and focus that energy into the stories impacting the tech world. I'm your host, Justin Severson, filling in for Jim this week. Joining me today, I have Chris Waters of GameSpot. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
And Ryan Lawler of TechCrunch.
Hey.
Thanks for being on the show, guys.
Yeah.
So let's get right into it. The big news this week, Microsoft pulls an Xbox 180.
Hey-o.
They had some rather strict DRM rules regarding buying, selling, and trading used games. Turns out they're going back on that now. So, Chris, tell me, is this good for consumers?
I think that it is good for consumers, if only because this policy change is clearly based on the fact that their E3 showing, they got trounced by Sony in the court of public opinion.
Absolutely.
People were just, and this wasn't a news story that was just on shows like this or sites like GameSpot. It went wide. Jimmy Kimmel was talking about it. So many people are devoting this, these anti-consumer accusations against Microsoft, rightly so. And the fact that they switched, whatever they end up doing, I think it's a victory for consumers.
This started a long time ago, though. Before even the show, there was that flap where they had that exec, I forget his name, who tweeted something about things being always on, and he promptly left a day later.
That's right. Yeah. They've sort of. It's been a bungle since the beginning, right? They've failed to get out their message about what's cool about always-on gaming ecosystem, and instead it's just been you're gonna need an internet connection, and that used game, you can't give that to your friend. That has been the salient message, and so of course people are gonna be averse to that.
So I want to go a little bit of a different direction with this conversation because everyone's talking about consumer rights regarding disc-based games, right? Mm-hmm. Now, it really seems like what Microsoft wanted to do was use the discs to move us towards digital distribution being the primary method of getting content. So if you look at it that way, it almost seems like their original idea was actually beneficial for consumers regarding the sharing of a digital library. Mm-hmm. So looking at it that way, is this really the best choice for the future? 5 years from now, are we going to look back and say, yeah, it was really a good idea that they went back to their not their original plan, but are we going to be looking at digital distribution titles? We can't share them as we do today?
Yeah, I actually think it's kind of silly, this whole disc-based economy. I think that, in the same way that video, everything is moving sort of to streaming and whatever, I think we're going to have the same shift in gaming. Not necessarily that you're going to be streaming your games, but at least you'll be, sort of getting them digitally as opposed to going down to a store and purchasing a disc. So I think that, at the end of the day, we're going to end up owning those digital copies and not going to be able to share them anyway. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of just one step in that direction. I don't know. I think the consumer rights issues were a little overblown.
I think that it's consumer backlash against what they, perceived as shutting down the way that consumers were using games before, buying and selling used games, trading them with friends freely, being able to play without an internet connection. All of these things people are accustomed to, and Microsoft was like, we just want to put you here. But now with their change, I don't think that they're actually, I think eventually we'll get to that state. We'll get to the digital library. We'll get to, you're connected as, internet connectivity continues to spread, and permeate the nation and the world. I think that we will see these policies that Microsoft is going back on enacted. It's just that they should have shepherded people along instead of just trying to pick them up and plunk them down in the next generation.
You think we'll see it just with a gradual transition over the course of the Xbox One's life cycle?
I do. I think that they're holding up Steam, Valve's PC-based digital distribution service as a paragon of what they want to move towards.
Well, people love that.
And people love Steam, absolutely. It has its problems, but it's almost universally beloved because of the sheer breadth of games you can get on there, of the sales and promotions that are enabled, through their deals with publishers and the digital distribution stuff. I think the other interesting thing, I just feel like Microsoft should have done something like, they need to incentivize customers to go there and lead them there, not shove them there. And I think that's the real change in their policy.
GameStop actually came out and said, what great news this is that Microsoft is going back on their policies. It seems to me that what's good for GameStop does not necessarily equate with what's good for consumers. And we had a lot of developers come out and say, this is actually very bad news, because what you're going to see is you're going to see microtransactions, you're going to see things like EA's Origin, where developers are trying to get money out of used games. Do you think that the disc metaphor was a bad choice to begin with? Do you think if they came out and said, all Xbox One titles are only digital, you download them online, and you can share them all of these ways, would that have been received better, or does the disc not really matter?
I think the disc is still immensely important. It's still a key to how so many people use their gaming consoles. If you own a disc, you can pass it to someone else. Is that something you value? Is reselling something you value, or do you prefer to, just have it all available and neatly? You pick up your controller, you play whatever you want. Where do you sort of fall?
I mean, I rarely, if ever, resell games. I like to finish a game, put it on my shelf, and be able to see this is everything I've accomplished over the life of this console. Now, granted, digital gets away from having that, but it also doesn't. I don't sell the games anyway, so not having that ability doesn't really concern me. If anything, to be able to download a game on Xbox Live and share it with a friend who, because even though they're $5, $10, some of those games it's a hard sell. They're very esoteric, artistic, and you say, hey, you should really check out Braid.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. Somebody says, I don't understand this. Why would I pay $5, $10 for this? Being able to lend it to them could actually go a long way for sharing digital content.
And that was something. Sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge gamer, honestly, but I just don't buy discs. Like, if there's a game that I want, I will, pay for it on the store and download it and play it, on the game console. So the whole disc-based economy it doesn't really. It seems weird to me, but I don't know.
Well, I think that the digital sharing thing that you mentioned, Justin, is something that Microsoft talked about, having this family sharing thing where if you're Xbox friends with someone for more than 30 days, you can do this kind of digital share thing. And they didn't detail it too much, but it's those kind of intriguing things that, ways to preserve, what do people like about sharing? They like sharing that experience. They like both they don't like physically handing a disc. It's about that shared experience. And if you can do that through a digital medium, then that just removes so many mental barriers for the consumer in terms of bringing them into that digital world.
So it sounds like if you were somebody who does primarily digital content on your modern consoles, then these ideas might have actually been a benefit to you rather than a hindrance.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think that having there's also the idea of sort of developer focus. If a developer is creating their game and they don't have to put resources, or a publisher doesn't have to put resources into physical distribution, into designing the box, into sort of getting the game onto the disc, that's resources that they can spend. They can recoup, or they can spend investing in the game, or what have you. I think with the whole concern about DRM, right, is how do content creators get paid for their content, and used games are a huge slice out of the pie that people don't get.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see as we continue to sort of get away from discs a little bit. Are they going to find? Is that going to benefit? Are we going to see studios maybe not shuttering or budgets changing? Only time will tell. But do you think? So here's a question: if you're the used game store, GameStop, obviously you're happy that the Xbox One is like, okay, you can use used games discs.
Sure.
That's a breath of fresh air. But does GameSpot, does this shift to the digital future? Does it spell their doom 10 years down the road?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I think that those stores are going to disappear the same way that sort of Blockbuster disappeared, and the same way that you see shrinking physical media spots in like Best Buy, or they'll probably go away the same way that that all these other physical media locations have.
I'm sure there'll be much more to talk about with Xbox 180 later this week and in the coming years. Next story, Instagram introduces video. Vine has been really popular for everyone, and now Instagram wants in on the action. What is the deal?
I think it was a really, really bad move.
Why?
I think it was so what makes Instagram great is that it was an app with one really, really core focus. It was just about photos, and as just about photos, I know I have a lot of friends who have very, very curated lists of who they follow specifically because they love the photography that these people are doing. And now you add this other, medium, you add this other type of use case, and it kind of ruins it. I mean, I don't know if you've looked at your Instagram feed over the last 24 hours, and
it's
a lot of it is just people like testing out video, but it's horrible. It's a horrible experience, and it completely like ruins the core of what Instagram was about.
Do you think that's something where Instagram, people will see their feeds turning into this video-filled abomination, and will take advantage, will sort of self-correct, and people will be like, well, now I need to take care to choose the frame because I want these videos to show up in people's feed in a way that's not jarring or unpleasant or like not Instagrammy. Like they want to have a certain continuity with their own artistic vision that's led people to follow them on Instagram.
Yeah, I think that what we'll see is people will get better at doing video on Instagram, and so the experience won't be as jarring just because the content will improve. Like as people like figure out like, okay, this is a cool filter to use for this type of content or whatever.
Sure.
And just do a better job of like creating the content. But the problem is that it's still a fundamentally different experience to be looking at video in your feed and sort of to have it autoplay and it disrupts the user experience. And so I think it was really kind of a foolish move because it kind of ruins what Instagram's been all about.
So why do you think they did it?
I mean, it was clear it was a pretty defensive move against Vine. Like Vine's been really, really popular. I know a lot of people who use it, and it's cool. It's a cool application, but I wouldn't want my, hipstamatic photos in my Vine feed.
Right.
So why would I want, videos in my Instagram?
I did see a couple interesting things in my Vine feed over the last, few days as this has been announced, is that a lot of people are posting short little videos telling everyone to follow them on Instagram. Is this it for Vine? Do they have a chance to still be relevant now that Instagram is where you go to view photos.
Right.
My Instagram feed is much more robust than my Vine feed, just because more people use Instagram.
And the user base is bigger. I mean, is that just the gravity of 100+ million people as opposed to 15 to 20 on Vine? Like, just people just naturally like, oh, I was dabbling in video on Vine, but if I can do Vine on Instagram, like, yeah, I want to stick with that one thing.
Right.
Is Vine gonna wither?
I personally think that there's always a market for single-purpose applications that do one thing really, really well.
Yeah.
And that's what Vine is. That's what Instagram was.
Right.
And that's why I think that, Vine will probably continue to flourish. That's why I think that, people who want to view videos will go to that app as opposed to go to Instagram, because they're different use cases, or at least they used to be. And there's a whole history of, Facebook or Google or any of these big companies basically going after a single popular market competitor, and there's always like, oh, is Facebook Poke going to be the Snapchat killer? Is Facebook Places going to kill Foursquare? Is Google Plus going to kill Facebook? And the answer, almost across the board is always no. So that's kind of how I feel that this is going to play out.
It seems like maybe they could have a tab for all, a tab for video, and a tab for photos. That way, if you don't want to see the videos,
right,
you don't have to.
And that could give them some pretty compelling feedback on the popularity of videos as well.
Right, exactly. See how many people are actually viewing the entire feed versus just photos, just video. Verizon has some issues with their bandwidth provider, and Netflix. Seems like there's a lot of finger pointing. Netflix doesn't really work that well for some customers. Netflix is blaming Verizon. Verizon's blaming someone else. What's going on here?
So really what it comes down to is that, Verizon and Cogent, which is sort of a bandwidth provider for Netflix, are getting into the spat over peering. And the idea is, like, if you peer, you're basically just transferring data for free. The idea behind it is that, like, it will go both ways. What Verizon's saying is that all the traffic that they're getting from Cogent, though, is like way above what they're sending back, in part because of Netflix, and so they're asking them to actually pay for that traffic.
So from their view, that relationship's out of balance.
Right.
What does Cogent say? They're like, come on.
They're like, well, we've been peering for a while.
Yeah.
So it's just like one of those things where it's not necessarily net neutrality because you don't really have to peer. They're well-established sort of business relationships. They go on all the time, but yeah, the person who loses is the consumer in this case, because these providers can't get along.
Because they're, not just putting it all out there for your Netflix to stream in uninterrupted and at HD, et cetera, all that you want.
Right. Because along the way, someone has to pay for that, right? Like someone has to pay for, the traffic, the data, the network upkeep, and all of that. And Verizon saying that, if you're just going to send a bunch of data our way, like we're going to have to upgrade our networks and all of that.
Yeah, there's an infrastructure cost here that we're bearing the brunt of.
Exactly.
But then there's also Netflix has their own tools in place that that Verizon and Cogent are choosing not to use.
Well, Netflix has sort of a caching box that they've been giving to different providers, and they basically say it's an open source caching thing. You put it in your data centers close to the consumer, and then you won't have to worry about having so much traffic go your way. The problem is no one's really incentivized to use it, even if it is free, because it.
Least of all Verizon. I mean, they have a partnership with Redbox, which is moving into streaming.
Right, exactly.
So why would Verizon make moves to make Netflix work better on their
own network?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
They're trying to move customers to the system that's benefiting them.
Business-wise, do I serve my consumers? Do I try to funnel my consumers this way? And you get into these gray areas of all right, well, what do you, when your resolution drops in the middle of your Game of Thrones, are you
unacceptable?
Yeah. Who are you pointing the finger at?
Right.
And you're not really sure if there's collusion at work.
Well, maybe Google has a way to make all of our Game of Thrones episodes look stunning all the time. Want to run through a couple things really quick, a little bit of lightning round action. Just going to throw some things out at you guys.
Sure.
Quick, agree, disagree, have a little quick conversation. Google to beam internet from balloons. Google revealed top secret plan Saturday to send balloons to the edge of space with the lofty aim of bringing internet to the 2/3 of the global population currently without web access. Is this PR or is this actually practical? Chris.
Balloons on the edge of space. As trepidatious as I am about more junk up around the edge of space, I think more internet for more people is anything. We should strive to do that in any capacity.
Ryan.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but it also seems weird that it's Google doing it.
I mean,
do no evil, right? They can't be evil balloons. Of course, they're not evil mind control balloons.
A corporation sending internet beaming things up into space, that doesn't sound like an evil plan to me.
No, not at all.
So speaking of Google, AntiGlass, glasses that foil facial recognition software. Developed by Japan's National Institute of Informatics, these glasses include 11 LEDs that blast a privacy curtain of near-infrared light to obscure your face. Is this the must-have fashion accessory of 2050 when Google Glass is ubiquitous? Chris.
Can it also beam UV rays so I get a nice healthy glow? Or more freckles, I guess, in my case. I don't. As a person who goes on the internet and has my face on cameras and whatnot, I've sort of lowered the barriers of privacy to some extent. So if someone's Google Glass in my face, whatever, I don't know.
Pictures of you, videos of you, who knows what else of you is out
true.
there already.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Maybe Google Glass is not a concern for you, right?
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, I don't know. The Google Glass thing is kind of weird. I don't know that Google Glass is going to actually go anywhere, so I'm not that concerned about it.
You're not sure if a Google product is going to go anywhere?
That one specifically, that weird looking thing on people's face, yeah.
It does look weird, man.
So you're not going to worry about buying these glasses?
I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about stuff like facial recognition like being applied to, you know, all of the photos on Instagram, Facebook, or whatever, along with all the location information that's already embedded into those photos, so that everyone will know, you know, who was where when. Like that's I think a bigger problem than, you know, this niche device.
Than someone who is physically there looking at you, being able to identify who you are.
Maybe if somebody invents some sort of like hologram projection, so I could like look like someone else anytime somebody takes a picture of me.
There we go.
Right?
That'd be awesome.
So maybe somebody will invent that. Maybe if we let kids have iPads. LA School Board okays $30 million for Apple iPads. The LI Unified District Board of Education voted 6-0 on Tuesday to approve the contract after hearing senior staff laud Apple's product as both the best in quality and the least expensive option that met the district specifications. The question is this the best way to spend our education dollars?
I think the iPad's an awesome product. There's a lot of good education stuff on there. But they're going to be so pissed when Apple releases the new iPad in like a month.
Oh, yeah.
You know, or next year.
A lot of
when
iPads
Apple
going on
releases the next iPad. It's not really clear, like, you know, how long they plan to, you know, hang on to those devices, right?
I mean, you saw your high school textbooks, man. They hang on to them as long as possible.
Exactly.
I think iPads in the classroom or any tablet in the classroom is a fantastic idea. I think the potential for using these as an effective learning tool and teaching tool, not just, you know, because transforming kids into digital age savvy adults, but also reaching a broader variety of learning types and, you know, addressing people with various learning challenges. I think that has tremendous potential. But it's all going to come down to the curriculum and how teachers are educated and how to use these and implement these devices in the classroom.
I think you bring up the best point of all, right? It doesn't matter what tools are available. It matters how the teachers are actually using those tools. The iPad does go a long way towards that, but I think it'll be up to the teachers and staff to make sure that the curriculum fits and they aren't just, you know, all of your textbooks in one space and then nothing else.
And hopefully some of that money to buy those will go into the training as well, as opposed to just putting them there and be like, there you go, teach those kids how to program Angry Birds and become billionaires.
I don't know when the last time you were in a public school was, but I think you're giving them maybe a little more
no,
credit.
it's wishful
than they
thinking
deserve.
for sure, but you know, I think that it holds excellent potential for the future of education.
It definitely does hold some excellent potential. And with that, that's all the time we have. Before we wrap up, I'm happy to announce Revision 3's new network, TestTube. TestTube explores science, the nature of things, life, curiosity, and all-around awesome content. You can find all of the new shows at testtube.com, so check it out. And with that, that's all we have. I'd like to thank Chris Waters of GameSpot.
That was a lot of fun, Justin.
Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah.
And Ryan Lawler of TechCrunch. Always a pleasure.
Yep.
And with that, if you guys have any suggestions, comments, criticisms, let us know what you think of what we talked about. Let us know in the comment section down below. Until next time, you've been watching Downloaded.